All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for the patience that you displayed while we had you wait before we get started. Again, the situation was out of our hands. As you know, the country's facing internet-wide shortages. Before I start the webinar, I just want to introduce to all of you what Education USA is. Education USA is a global network under the U.S. Department of State made up of over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source to U.S. higher education. Through Education USA, advisors work with advisees to provide updated, comprehensive, and unbiased information on higher education in the United States. In Pakistan, we are part of the United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, or USCFP, which is also part of the Fulbright Commission. In fact, USCFP houses the Fulbright Commission. USCFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through cultural and educational exchange. We have offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, but we are available for any student virtually outside of these cities as well. And with that, I would like to hand this webinar over to Zulfiqar. Zulfiqar is a graduate. He's a Fulbright scholar himself. Zulfiqar, remind me again. I think you're a graduate of Columbia University, correct?
Cornell
Cornell,
University.
sorry, I think I made that same mistake last time. You're a graduate of Cornell University. I'm going to hand it over to him. Please keep the general Q&As for the end of the session. And if Zulfikar asks you to participate in any time during this webinar, please do participate. All right, over to you, Zulfikar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zubair, and sorry to participants and USEFP for this lag that we had. I'm sure we are ready to start, and I'm excited to be part of this uh, verbal reasoning orientation. So GRE is a verbal reasoning section. Mastering the verbal section with confidence. This orientation will help you understand different aspects of the GRE verbal reasoning section and give you an overview of different question types and some practice questions covering a little bit of analytical writing part if we are saved with time. The overall objective is to give you an overview, break down different question types, diving deep with some question, which will give you some practice examples and explanations. And explanations will help you understand how should we decode. Once again, I usually mention this, that the orientation is for general audience. So it means that if you are at a higher level, you might find it a little easier. And if you are at a very beginner level, you might find it a little harder. But the orientation overall will cover different aspects. We'll also talk about different strategies and approaches and how you should be focusing on reading comprehension and vocabulary, some bits on that. We will talk about GRE scores at the beginning, how the verbal section is scored. If there are any questions around GRE in general, we can also take those given the time considerations, and also how you should be preparing for the test. So GRE is your is a test which basically assesses your readiness for the graduate level program, which requires a lot of heavy and dense reading, whether you are able to comprehend that and pace up with the class. Are you able to do assignments and understand the content in any field, whether it is social science, public policy, engineering, or even literary subjects, whether you are able to do and understand and engage with the text and then also able to write those. An important announcement is that since 2023 September, there is a new GRE version which has similar question types and everything, but the length of the test is much shorter and the sections are much specified and each section has lesser number of questions. In the verbal one, the changes, I'm not highlighting the changes here, but there are going to be two sections. The first section is going to be 12 questions for 18 minutes, and then for 23 minutes, you will have a second section which will have 15 questions, and in between there will be a quantitative section. So there will be a verbal section, then quantitative, then a verbal, and then quantitative. And the analytical writing section comes at the beginning of the test for 30 minutes. This is how a screen looks like, just to be familiarized with the other aspects, including this one, so that your anxiety during the test levels is not high. You have multiple options. You can shuffle between questions, as you can see, back and forth here. So you can start with the last question. You can do the first questions. There will be a couple of questions which will be around the same passage. So they will have a screen split between two types. So there will be a passage on the left and the questions will be changed with the next one. You can mark a question that, okay, you want to come back to it either for review or you haven't even attempted. I would highly recommend that you still mark the question in a random manner, even if you're going to, you think that you are going to come back. There's always a possibility that the time limitations will be there. It's a high stake test. You have paid a lot of money, and also these scores are going to be very valuable in terms of securing scholarships and admissions. So the time limitation and the stress is definitely there. Um, Once you have marked or even unmarked, you can at any point review your question answer. So if there are 12 questions you were to answer, you will find in the review section how many questions you have answered. If you have marked any, those will be highlighted. Uh, there's other information about the number of questions is there and the time. You can always hide the time if you are too stressed out about it, but I would recommend, unless you have some other time source, do keep this in sight. Uh, you can leave the section if you have completed it, or even without completing it, you can just leave the section, and you can also leave the test altogether. So there's this option, but it doesn't happen like you click this button and the test will be quitted right there. It will ask for, there will be a prompt asking you to confirm this choice. Scoring range is between 130 to 170 in a particular section. So with the verbal reasoning, your lowest score. So if you leave the test without answering a single question, or you leave the section or the test with any random picking of answers, you will still get 130. So 130 is your zero. 170 is the highest, and this range of 40 score is your entire bracket. I hope you can see my mouse. So you will see that people who have put in at least $205 and they are expecting to apply for scholarships and admissions, they might not be so unprepared. So less than 1% will be scoring somewhere between 130 and 135. And the top scorers, which is a very high range, because this is the same test you are applying with American students, with the UK, and all over the world, students are taking the same sort of test. So the scores after 165 to 170 becomes very less likely. The chances are there will be a very small percentage of people in that range. So in effect, what you're doing is you are competing with other students in the range of somewhere around 135 to 136 to 164, 165. Most of you. Some can even go, of course, further. Uh, so my point here is that this 30 mark range of scores is a very critical one, and each score will get you jumped high to a much larger audience you will be improving upon. There's a minimum score of 130, 170 is the highest. Why is 130? We will talk about it if we are left with time. There's always a 1 point increment. There are no partial correct answers. If there were three correct options you were to pick and you pick two correct and one incorrect, or you do not pick any other option, the answer will still be, the score will still be zero. Versus someone who has not even attempted the question, they will also get zero. So there are no partial answers. There's always only a correct option answer or a pool of options which are correct. And unless you pick all those, you will not be uh, given any credit for that. Percentiles, the scores are considered as a percentiles. So if you are 97th percentile, that means you are having 97% of test takers behind you. That means you are on the top 3%. So percentiles are much more useful rather than the actual scores. Uh, Section level adaptability. So you have two sections. The first section will have 12 questions. Based on your correct answers in this particular section, the difficulty level of the second section will be decided upon. And this is how it happens. Your first section is the medium level section. And by the way, this is a slide which I have taken from the internet, and the number of questions mentioned here is from the previous version. So ignore that this 20 questions part. There's 12 questions over here. Based on this 12 questions in the section 1, if you perform excellent on that, the next section, the section 2, will be very hard. And if you have performed average or below average, the second section will be very easy. And based on that, your scoring range will be decided. What happens is that your performance on section 1 decides the difficulty level of section 2, and the section 2 difficulty level will then ensure that you're somewhere around, let's say, 155 to 170, and there will be no chance of you going down. So the difficulty level higher means that even if you do a few correct answers in the second section, if that was very difficult, your score range still will be in a higher range. Okay, so this section level adaptability makes it more accurate assessment of your verbal reasoning skills. These skills basically measure your ability to analyze and evaluate written material. Okay, it can be sentences, it can be sentence equivalence questions, we'll come to those, and overall reading. Synthesize the information, whether you were able to just read and comprehend it, or were you able to synthesize different concepts and ideas being presented in this? Were you able to analyze the relationships of different components between sentences, between paragraphs, from one paragraph to another, why the second paragraph was there, why was the need for the first paragraph, and things like those. So the relationship between a passage, the different components. Were you able to recognize the relationship between words and different concepts presented in that? This is an ability which is required in your higher level academic studies, and that's why GRE requires this assessment. So it draws heavily on your vocabulary and whether you are able to contextually understand. Some words may have different meanings in different contexts. Were you able to do that? Were you able to detect different relationship types? Were you able to see the logic of sentences and different paragraphs? Were you able to draw inferences? So something which is not specifically or exactly mentioned by the author, but it definitely infers towards something. So that inference. And then whether you were able to then make an recognition of overall major subject points or some minor details which were given. Were you thinking that, okay, this minor detail that came into the passage, whether that was the main purpose of it? I hope your reading comprehension abilities will then decide, were you able to see any irrelevant information just mentioned as a by the way information, or was it part of the major theme of the passage? And can you summarize that information in a concise manner? And how this will test, we'll see to this. Whether you will understand the passage, the structure of the passage. Okay, one thing happened, and based on that, this thing happened, but some other thing also happens this or that way. So either, however, and how the passage is flowing. Whether you were able to see the tone and the purpose and perspective of the author. In one particular case, if he or she is presenting 2 points, it can be just presentation of two different opposing viewpoints. In some, the tone can be harsh about one particular point and soft about the other. It can be supportive of something. It can be disregarding of something. It can be mentioning another aspect, but it might be just making a mockery of it. That, okay, oh, some people feel like this about this particular theme, and many things like that. So all of these things you have to understand in your reading. And whether you are able to understand what you're reading and apply reasoning. So if this information was provided by the author, would the author agree or disagree to certain thing? So all of those options you will have to read. So basically your core skills which will be tested is your critical reading and reasoning, your vocabulary knowledge in context, your understanding of nuances and tone, and eliminating any wrong answers strategically. Okay? The wrong answers can be based on, these wrong answers can be based on your misreading of the text, what it was saying. It has three question types. One is reading comprehension, which constitutes almost 50% of the total questions in both sections, and in each section as well. The first section will also have around 6 questions about reading comprehension, and the second one also same. And there will be a text completion questions. We'll talk about this in brief. And there's a sentence equivalence section. Okay. And in the writing part, there used to be two tasks. We used to call them tasks. It was an analyze an issue and then analyze an argument. The analyze an argument part is no more there since the test has been shortened. Analyze an issue, 30-minute task remains there. So you are given an issue statement, an essay statement, and you have to provide your answers and take a position. We will see if we find some time. I'm sure we will try to definitely find some time around that because most of the verbal section participants are keen about this one. Reading comprehension has long and short passages, and passage is basically either a single para, it can be 2, 3, 4, or up to 5 paras. It can be a long passage, that means there are 5 paras or 4 paras into it. The paras can have varying length, and it can have 2 sentences, 4 sentences, rarely 5 sentences as well. The question types are around inference, main idea, detailed questions, and then there is an argument analysis. So some argument is being presented by the author of that passage. So the author of our passage can be different from the author of some text which our author is taking. So all of these are different things. You will find those while you will be practicing. Some strategies that are usually applied once we jump into those examples, we will look into those in more detail. Skim for the main idea and the structure, how the point was derived. The first point I'm talking here, how it was structured to prove a particular point, or just to even give an information, what structure was used. They won't be asking you about the names of the structures, but just to understand how the paragraph or the passage is flowing. And then annotate key points or arguments, able to see, okay, in this particular para or sentence, this XYZ point was highlighted or rejected even. Are you able to eliminate and extreme absolute answers? There are strategies around those, but those all depend on this one key thing, that no strategy is effective without strong foundational reading comprehension abilities. So strong foundational reading comprehension abilities are definitely important. These are strategies that we will be talking about briefly here and in the longer sessions later, if there comes a point, they are secondary to the actual overall ability to comprehend the written material. We also say that base the answer on the passage information only. If there is a passage, let's say about sociology or anthropology, and there is you have no idea about what this field is, that doesn't matter at all, because all the information is just based on that passage. And what happens is that people who have a little bit of detailed background on that particular subject topic might be using their own beside passage information. That is something you should definitely avoid. The fifth point around here, tackle global questions, which means the more general questions about the main idea, about different things, the overall tone. These are global in terms of the passage, broader questions. And then there are some specific questions in a particular line, one particular word was used, what was the meaning in that context. It is recommended usually that you take global questions first, because your ability to comprehend the overall passage tone and the content is more important than the specific information or the content in the passage. Okay. There's a single answer options. There's the multiple choice questions can have multiple correct answers. Okay, pick all which can be correct. Select a sentence from a passage. There is also sometimes a question in your screen. What happens is that there is a split in between the screen. On the left, you will have the passage. The passage remains always there. If there are two questions based on it, on the right side, if you will move next, the second question will come, but the passage will remain here. So you will be able to read entire passage in one flow. And it can ask you a question, okay, in which particular sentence in the passage this or that point was propagated or rejected or provided with additional information. And when you will go to the passage uh, in that particular questions case, you will be able to highlight sentences. So you can pick any sentence and only the correct answer will be getting any scores. Uh, Types of passages usually come from, usually, not always, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. These are the generic subject matters around which the passages are built upon. And these are very well researched passage comprehension parts. Entire information will be based on the available passage and the information. Common question types are usually incomplete statement questions according to the passage, except questions. Except questions are very tricky sometimes because you're in a hurried mode, okay? It's very difficult, by the way, virtually to show how my hands are moving or what I want to highlight here. In except type questions, what happens is that just uh, understand the situation. You are in the test. You have paid for this. This is going to be a very high stake test because the scoring, each number will take you, each higher single score will take you beating on at least 1,000, 2,000 international candidates. So you are in a stressed situation. The time limit is short. You are not in a very like your own room situation. There is silence. You want to have some water, you will have to go into another room. So my point is, you're not in a very in a position where you are just sitting around and understanding a passage. It's a test situation, high stakes situation. So the stress level is there. And then uh, you are reading a question and it was asking about except XYZ, everything was correct. So you have to pick that option which is actually not correct. But in a hurried manner, in that tense situation, you might actually understand the question wrongly. So understanding the question properly and be very careful about these words is important. And then questions like most likely. So this is where your judgment calls start to come in. And that judgment call will definitely be sharper if you are able to understand the passage more correctly, right? In a more detailed manner or more. Uh, so understanding the question is very important. Uh, True, false, or can't tell questions. So there can be some questions which will have, okay, the passage was saying this. What about following, whether the author will consider them to be true or false? That information might not exactly be available in the passage, but the question will be around your understanding of the passage. And based on that, some extra statements that the question will be asking. And in those questions, you will have to read all the options, the 5 options. And because it's very text heavy and it's a dense text, understanding the passage and then reading 2 to 3 liner on each option, and then 5 of those options makes it 10, 12 lines of again on a single question, and the question statement separately. That makes it a little trickier. So more practice, definitely, like always in any test, is much more needed here. Let's try a reading passage here. Take 2 minutes and try to understand the passage here. And so where after some time I'll be needing, when we'll be coming to the question on this, for any answers from participants, we will need the Q&A open for them.
Yes, it is open for them. You should have access to it too, right? Can you open the Q&A box?
Mm,
right now
Right.
there's no open questions because they were not
Yeah,
really related to anything. So,
sure, sure.
yeah, but like for example, this question, can you see this question? Does it show up for you?
Uh, I have open questions that I can see, but yes, I need now see one response of yes.
All right,
So I'll be
perfect.
able to see.
Perfect. Yeah. So as soon as we get to the Q&As, then you'll be able to see the questions, hopefully.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, participants. So this is our passage, and here is one question around it. In this case, there's no line 9 here. I have copy pasted the question exactly because these questions are crafted in a very technical manner. From the lines I picked it up, it was line 9. In this case, it is line 4. Here is a word at the start of line 4. So rather than typing your answer, just give me options A, B, C, D, E. And even if you have to pick a random answer, I want everyone to answer this, please. Yeah, C, D, B. You this thank you. Yeah, I really like this answer, C or B. When you practice, I really want you to do this way. If you are sure about an answer and you answer it, let's say B or C, you write in the practice in your practice sessions at home, you should write in brackets the percentage of confidence you have in that option. If you are 100% confident, write it down. And then if that goes wrong, then you need to not even double, you have to quadruple your efforts on that question and the entire concept around it. Why? Because you are 100% confident and that answer got wrong. That is very bad. Not bad in terms of bad, but in terms of your future approach. You must rectify that in a much detailed way. And if you are sure about, if you're not sure, maybe you want to say B, so you write it, let's say 40% or 60% chance I have that answer B is correct, but then 40% I also think that it can be C. So this will give you a good understanding of why B or C or one of them was correct, or even both of them were not correct. So it's a good strategy. You see, it says that the magazines accorded some legitimacy to the East End working class theater. So it may have either revealed, the revealed would have been an option when we said, okay, this uh, understanding or legitimacy was there, but it was only revealed by the magazines. It seems that that's not the case. And we will talk about this passage in a much more detailed for a larger audience that we have around here after a bit, after we cover two next question types as well. Uh, Granted, so it granted some legitimacy. It seems that's the right answer, and that is in this case. Why is it so? We will talk about it in a much detailed way because once we decode the entire sentence by sentence and the themes in this, just to understand how a passage should generally be treated while you are practicing, right? Of course, that sort of detailing you cannot do during the test, but this approach will help you while you will be practicing and then able to comprehend better. Verified, there were some options about verified as well. So it seems like that if the verified would have been an option, that would have been the case when the magazines know that there is some legitimacy to East End working class theaters, but it is not being accepted by another group or some group of people. And now the magazines are verifying it that no, this is the case and the legitimacy is there. They are verifying it. It seems there is not a proper case for that. So this would not be the correct option in that case. Are you able to see this slide now about the sentence equivalence? I hope so.
Yes, the slide is visible.
Thank you. Uh, the sentence equivalence questions involve 6 options, and you have to pick 2 which will give the sentence. So this is a different question type. It asks you that, okay, there's an incomplete sentence with one single blank, and you have to fill in 2 words in a way that they will provide the sentence an equivalent meaning. So the entire sentence will get the similar meaning by only those 2 words. So it tests your vocabulary and general logic and about understanding of the sentence. And the strategy you have to use is that you might look at the synonyms of those 2 words, but in the context, they might have different meanings, or there may be 3 synonyms, but only 2 will be correct, and which one goes with the flow, and only those 2 will be specifically correct. And also, if there are 2 synonyms, they might be synonyms at the word level, but in the sentence, they will have a different context. So it's a combination of sentence completion and your understanding of the words pairing. A quick example will be able to help it better. And it's a very simple example. The politician's statement was dash. It appealed to emotions, but lacked factual basis. Okay, you have these options: evocative, poignant, manipulative, misleading, clear, insightful. So you can use your Q&A, and I'll get a sense around how many think which words are the correct choice. In this case, you will have to give 2 answers. It's a sentence equivalence. It will only work with 2 answers, no single or more than 2, and you won't have those options, by the way. Everyone, please, just even making a random guess would be very helpful. Okay, from this simple example, I can glean 3 different observations there. It's a simple, by the way, and the answer should be quite clear for someone who will actually be giving the test. At this stage, you might be lagging behind in your practice or something. But otherwise, it's a very simple question. And even then, we have some wrong options, which is fine. But that draws a higher level points there, 2 points. First of all, clear and insightful in terms of some argument or written material or statements. Clear and insightful can have similar meaning. So these are synonyms as well. Manipulative and misleading can also be very synonyms. Evocative is generally which can evoke or poke emotions. It can be positive emotions, negative emotions, and poignant is always a negative word. So poignant and evocative could have been synonymous in this situation if the evocative would mean on a negative side, but not exactly. So synonyms alone won't work. However, if you are picking evocative and poignant, I can tell you one thing for sure. Whoever picked up or whoever will be picking up in the actual test might have this very skewed sort of understanding of the test. Since manipulative and misleading and clear and insightful as well are very simple words, are not very requiring a high level of vocabulary here, an immediate understanding might come, okay, it's a GRE level question. It might not be actually having very simple language or vocab answers around. So I must pick a higher difficulty level words. That can be one of the reasons for picking up those options. And in some cases, those can be correct as well, but the logic is totally flawed. And in this particular case, it is a wrong option to pick, wrong options to pick, A and B. C and D are the correct answers. Politician's statement was something which we don't know. It appealed to emotions, but what kind of word there should be? If we don't look at the options, what kind of word should it be? It is decided by the second part of the sentence. Something in the statement such that it is working in a way that it is appealing to emotions. So evocative actually makes a good sense because appealing to emotions might, I would say, conjure up, pop up in your mind a word which is very appealing, evocative in that sense, and you might be tricked to pick that. But in this case, that's not serving our purpose. It is appealing to emotions but lacked factual basis. So anything which is lacking factual basis is misleading. And misleading is not just lacking factual basis. Based on that false information or fake news information, you are misleading as well. So you're leading people to the wrong direction. Okay, so misleading is not just wrong, it is more than wrong in this particular instance. And when we say manipulative, it is also the same thing. Manipulative can have wrong information, but it can also be uh, right information, but not full information. And based on that not full information, you can manipulate, you can misguide people. So you see, the point here is more about appealing to the emotions in a way which is not going in the right direction. And in that way, manipulative and misleading may not be perfect synonyms independently, but in the sentence completion, they perfectly fit in. The politician's statement was manipulative. Why? Because it was trying to play with the emotions of people without having the factual basis. Or it was misleading. It is again the same thing that he or she was trying to play with their emotions by using uh, uh, wrong information or hiding intentionally the right information. Okay. Um, both correct answers must fit the sentence, and this is the important point, to give a similar meaning to the entire sentence. Okay. Uh, in the reading comprehension one, this is where all of this, and I'm going to spend some time because this is actually, from my experience, I'm pretty sure 90% students either lack skills or actually are concerned to know more about. You need active reading. So you need to engage with the text. You're not just a passive reader जो इंग्लिश को सिर्फ उर्दू ट्रांसलेशन की हद तक समझने के लिए पढ़ रहा है. You are being presented with an argument of rejection of a proposal, of a presentation of a proposal, or uh, making a point drive home or something like that. So it requires your active engagement, and it requires your critical thinking, deeper meanings, inference also, deductions, drawing conclusions from whatever is written and understanding beyond what is written, and understanding the structure of the text as well. So I can be arguing for something, but my approach to argue might be very different from someone else. And the written material works the same way, how the author is organizing his or her opinion to drive the same point, right? This passage we covered. However, there are a couple of questions around it again. So I would want you to take a look at this a little bit quickly. Let's say 20-30 seconds more. I have crafted some 4 to 5 higher difficulty gradual to higher difficulty level questions around it. Okay, when we now come to the questions, I would want you to not pop in your answers right away. Take 30 seconds and then start popping in. And I want everyone to participate, even if you have to randomly guess or whatsoever. But please, everyone do participate. Based on the answer options, we will be able to ex make some good explanations to guide you better. Here's the first question. I'm briefly turning back to the passage. This was requested, so a total of 3 sentences. This is how you see the structure. Which words are leading to what? What's the purpose of the passage? What's the overall tone and main idea of the passage? And we will break it down in income passage. Okay, you see here what's happening? There were two expenses. So we know one form of theater, East End and West End theater, was definitely talking about expensive or not so expensive, right? But magazines themselves, they were not expensive. First point. Second point, it's not about asking about that. So this information A and GRE questions are crafted, the answer options are crafted in a very technical manner, very, very technical manner. So there is always a trap around. So this information seems relevant generally in terms of the passage, but nothing to do with the question. And the information is wrong, by the way. Uh, so that option is out. They were seen as promoting. So the music halls, they were seen as promoting crude entertainment that corrupted taste and morals. This was specifically written, and this is the correct option. They were overly focused on drama and lack. No, this is an information. Why this is a trick one? Usually, magazines and the kind of magazines that we were talking about in the passage are dramatic. They may have more variety, less variety. These are opinions that are generally heard. So when your mind reads what you call these bubble thinking, bubbles in your mind that drama, yeah, lack of variety, yeah, seems like more of a magazine. This might be correct. So if you were unable to see anything in the passage, understand anything about the passage, you might be tempted to pick option C, but this is completely irrelevant. Nothing in the passage talks about this. They were too similar to the Western theaters. Some theaters were similar to the Western theaters, but we're talking about magazines here, and this option has nothing to do with the music halls. So this is a simple question, but you see all those options can still be confusing for those who were unable to comprehend the passage. Second question. What's the most likely reason the author contrasts East End theaters with the Western theaters? And the reason is very clearly mentioned in the passage. And that is to highlight the social divide between the two types of theaters. There's nothing mentioned about East End theaters were more popular, and also that was not the reason So the question is about the reason that author contrast, क्यों contrast कर रहा है वो ईस्ट एंड को वेस्ट एंड के साथ. They argue that both were equally sophisticated. There's no such argument. To show that how West End theaters had less influence on public taste, there's nothing about that. That one part of East End or West End were more influencing or having more appeal for public taste. It's option B. What's the function of the passage? So overall function of the passage. And I will break down this sentence in 5 steps in next 2 slides. Can I have answers around this, please? This will have some tricky, uh, this will have some tricky uh, more people please answer on this question. To suggest that music halls were more artistic than the other theaters to show that demonstrate the popularity of music halls among the public. Okay. I like your answers. Yes, answer B is the correct option. That is the function of it. There is a good tendency, which is not picked up here, and I'm surprised, but to argue that magazines exaggerated the negative aspects. It seems like the passage is saying that, but we'll come back to the passage and we'll see this is not the case. So this is our mind might be tricking us, but the option C is actually nothing to do with the available information in the passage. Okay, so this might look generally a true option, but that's not. And D option, to demonstrate the popularity. Yes, the popularity of music halls looks like an important thing or relevant thing, or the passage might have talked about it. There seems to be nothing about the popularity shaping the cultural values, and this is a very key aspect here. And the also option to suggest that music halls were more artistic than other theaters. Someone who has not read the passage might be inclined towards option A. Otherwise, there's no mention of artistic nature of theaters or music halls. What can be inferred about the social class distinction between the East End and West End and theaters? And I would also want you to please give your answers in Q&A for this one. Did we just lose? Uh,
Yes, now your screen is back. We momentarily lost it, but now
yeah, I'm surprised why. Yeah, we are back to the same question. I would want you to give your answers in Q&A. Be very considerate. Social class distinction between the East and sorry, there's some shuffling between. So do you have it? Yes. Um, uh, uh, Inference is more about what is exactly given. The option D, East End theaters were an imitation of the West End theaters. There is no exact mention of this particular information. So you see, text is an information. This East End theaters were an imitation of the West End theaters is an information, whether that's right or wrong. This information is not given in the passage. However, This is inferred. Why? Because we could see at one point it was clearly saying that they were following a similar format or depicting in a similar fashion, but it was also that it was for the working class setters. I'll take 2 minutes to decode. This is how you should be. Please ignore that mirrored part right now. And this first sentence is here. The role of magazines. This is the role of magazines as arbiters of the 19th century taste. So, in this particular capacity, their role is seen in their depictions of the London theatre. How they depict London's different theatres uh, was key for their role or function as arbiters of the 19th century taste. So they were arbiters. In this case, arbiters would mean that they were influencing, they were able to make an impression on the public about how they should be seeing a particular art. The second thing, the magazines accorded some legitimacy, they provided and granted some legitimacy to the East End working class theatres that mirrored the format of the fashionable West. So we can clearly see that it was not that they were trying to imitate it, but it was similar to that. So if that was similar, there must have been some intentional effort. However, they were serving these West End theaters were serving middle and upper class. And that's where your deductions come in. If West End theaters are mentioned to be serving middle and upper class audience, the structure of the sentence tells that, okay, West End theaters were serving middle and upper. It must be the case that East End working must be working for the working class. So that comparison is visible, very clear there. And then, however, the magazines also depicted, and by the way, this is also an important transition here, also depicted. It means the previous sentencing and how they were, how their depictions were critical as arbiters of the 19th century test, because once they start to depict a few things, they become, if they are आप लोग देखते थे पुराने जमाने में, अगर लोग देखते थे तो उससे अंदाजा होता था कि फैशन ये चल रहा है. सो वो लोगों के टेस्ट को भी डिफाइन कर रहे होते थे या इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे होते थे. तो ये जो डिपिक्शन है ये मैगजीन्स में होती थी, ये मैगजीन्स का कोर पर्पस था. और ये म्यूजिक हॉल्स के साथ compete करते थे. मतलब उसी हॉल में थिएटर हो रहा है, म्यूजिक हॉल हो रहा है, म्यूजिक हो रहा है. तो चूंकि म्यूजिक हॉल्स जो हैं वो compete कर रहे थे फॉर पैट्रनेज. पैट्रनेज किससे चाहिए थी? सो अगेन द लिमिटेशंस ऑफ वर्चुअलिटी. पैट्रनेज अवाम से ही चाहिए थी. मैं टिकट लेके $10 का हॉल में, म्यूजिक हॉल में जाना चाह रहा हूँ या थिएटर देखना चाह रहा हूँ, दैट्स माय चॉइस. फॉर पैट्रनेज दे वर कंपीटिंग, म्यूजिक हॉल्स वर कंपीटिंग विद द सेम थिएटर्स एज प्लेसेस. और लेकिन उन जगहों पे क्या होता था, म्यूजिक हॉल्स में क्रॉस एंटरटेनमेंट होती थी जो कि करप्ट करती थी स्पेक्टेटर्स टेस्ट एंड मॉरल्स. और ये करप्ट करती थी स्पेक्टेटर्स. आप अगर ये स्पेक्टेटर्स हैं तो ये डेफिनेटली उस म्यूजिक हॉल में म्यूजिक शो देखने वाले लोग हैं. अगर ये रीडर्स होते तो ये मैगजीन्स की तरफ रेफर कर जाता था कि उनकी डिपिक्शन, म्यूजिक हॉल्स की जो डिपिक्शन मैगजीन्स में लिखी हुई होती थी या छपी हुई होती थी, दैट वुड बी डिफाइनिंग योर. So this is how a good writing also starts to play in. So the first sentence, and this is just an example, of course, and that's how you should be taking your practice of reading passages, is doing this function. It is defining the role of magazines, that they were important to define tastes, shape tastes of people. They were working as arbiters. Then focus on London theaters कि उनकी जो depiction London theater में आती थी वो, और shaped how people viewed different types of theaters in London. Second sentence, the magazines accorded some legitimacy, ये बता रहा है कि ईस्ट एंड वर्किंग क्लास थिएटर्स में क्या होता था, उनको लेजिटिमेसी मिल रही थी. दे वर सिमिलर टू, क्योंकि वो मिरर कर रहे थे वेस्ट एंड थिएटर्स को. तीसरा ये पॉइंट कि वेस्ट एंड थिएटर्स वर नोन फॉर सर्विंग मिडिल एंड अपर क्लास. ठीक है, तो आपको वेस्ट एंड किसको सर्व कर रहा है, ईस्ट एंड किसको सर्व कर रहा है, ईस्ट एंड किसको फॉलो कर रहा है, ये सारी इंफॉर्मेशन इस सेंटेंस में है. एंड दिस इज हाउ यू एक्चुअली अंडरस्टैंड डिफरेंट थिंग. और इसी की बेसिस पे अब आपने एक व्यू पॉइंट बना लिया, तो अब आप अगर एक्टिवली इंगेज हो रहे हैं तो अब आप देखेंगे कि अगला सेंटेंस या इसी को प्रूव करने में जाएगा या इसके बरक्स के किसी एक और पॉइंट को सामने लाने में करेगा, और उसके सामने लाने में वो वर्ड हमें बताएगा कि कैसे चलेगा। वो बता रहा है हाउएवर, इसका मतलब है वो एक एक्सट्रीम से दूसरी साइड की पिक्चर अब आपको दिखाने जा रहा है। और इस सेंटेंस का पर्पस क्या था कि म्यूजिक हॉल्स के बारे में और उनकी नेगेटिव डिपिक्शंस कैसे हो रही थी, कि वो नेगेटिवली पोर्ट्रे किया गया मैगजीन्स में। म्यूजिक हॉल्स compete करते थे पैट्रोनेज में, ये इन्फॉर्मेशन है। उन म्यूजिक हॉल्स में क्रॉस एंटरटेनमेंट होती थी, ये बताया गया। और वो क्रॉस एंटरटेनमेंट, चूंकि मैगजीन्स डिपिक्शंस थे, लोगों के टेस्ट को डेवलप करने में आर्बिटर्स थे, तो वो लोगों की मोरालिटी को भी करप्ट कर रहे थे या टेस्ट को करप्ट कर रहे थे। आई होप वी आर गुड विद दैट, एंड बेस्ड ऑन दैट वी कैन नाउ क्लियरली सी कि वो इस क्वेश्चन की हद तक तो यहाँ है, लेकिन एक ही पैसेज से आप देख रहे हैं कितने क्वेश्चंस बन सकते हैं। So we can take a few questions. This is a much longer presentation because ये हमारे एक lengthy detail session होता है, उसके अराउंड थी। uh, मैं 2 मिनट ले लेता हूँ। जुबैर, should we?
Yes, we can take questions till 4:10 p.m. and at 4:10 p.m. we will close the webinar.
Okay, so I don't think we have time for this right now, but quickly analyze writing part only now composes of one issue statement. So a general statement comes in, you have to provide your assessment of whether you agree or disagree, but it's more about how you present your view. And that's the argument part which you be there. Actually, this is one part. A score of 3, a score of 4.5 on a similar topic. And this is where you make your, कि टेक्नोलॉजी ने ये किया या नहीं किया, उसकी एग्जाम्पल, अल्टीमेटली अपना ये वोकेबलरी का यूज, social behavior is contingent upon individuals' choices and social norms by all of this. So my point here was that your reading comprehension and writing skills go hand in hand, and usually is highly recommended. There are other books, and Lincoln Corner provides a lot of support around that. Uh, uh, you should be taking a good help from that. From online resources, I would highly recommend you to use Magoosh. They have free as well as paid content. Go a lot around random stuff on the GRE available on the internet. They are there to just grab your attention around that. I would highly recommend you to improve your mold of how you write and understand things. I also undertake these reading skill comprehension passages and how to improve your overall reading. We talked about this one. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, please, we can take them now. This 1 hour session was very less this time around. No, 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 no. There's a question that would it always be either A, B, or C, D, and E, F a continuous? No, never. It can be A, E. It can be C, E. It can be D, A, D, B, whatever. So there's absolutely no binding on that. Can we have more sessions? Usually, there used to be more sessions around detailed sessions around verbal. Used to have 10 lectures. That doesn't happen with the GRE USEFP sessions now. I offer it at some universities and some virtually, so you can take my email. But I would recommend you that if you are a little bit lagging behind, you should take general reading comprehension and overall writing structure, improving your structure. That is where the key is. Tips to improve vocabulary. Yeah, tips to improve vocabulary quickly. You should read. You should read quality stuff. You should take those vocab, and then at the end of 3 or 4 day continuous practice, you should revisit all those words. Always mandatory to revisit them in 3 4 days, and then at the end of month or 2 weeks. This is how vocabulary gets deep. What's a good score for Fulbright? Never a good answer for that. There's no good score for GRE. Fulbright, higher is always better, but your background matters, your application statements matter, and you can always justify if I am a graduate of very top-notch private universities to my score is not comparable with someone from a uh, average public university student, and this is definitely taken into consideration. My email is mentioned here, but please only give specific questions. I cannot promise answering every questions. I will look into that. Verbal section has no verbal section has much more questions than 20 total of 27 questions. Yes. Would you recommend taking GRE at home or test at the center? Oh yeah, definitely at the center. Once you're registered with 500 or some nominal charges, you can take a GRE mock test. You must do that. The time bindingness create some should be trying to practice. The initial practice should be, by the way, one important point. If you take 20, 30, 40 minutes even on single question during your initial practice, that is fine. And you must do that. There should be no time limit around your initial practice items at all. Understanding concepts takes time. Be very ready and uh, grilling about understanding a particular question. A was correct answer, B was definitely wrong, Y, C was definitely wrong, Y. GRE is a very, very strongly technically designed test. Always, all those options which are wrong will definitely be wrong. There should be no confusions in your mind. And while practicing, you should ensure that you understand that. When do we have official mock test? You can register for it any time once you are formally registered for the test. And the test can be taken at any day, registered in prior, of course, and they are continued throughout the year, 5 days a week. But the test load gets higher towards the closing of the Fulbright deadline, so you should register in advance. What do you say, Zubair? There were a lot of other questions as well, but I think broadly we covered quite a few.
Yes, I think we can end it there. Now I know many of the members in the audience, they have more questions, you have more concerns, and some of you may actually prefer in-person sessions as opposed to online sessions, right? So I would encourage you to please keep an eye on the USCFP website, educationusa.pk. Keep an eye on that website. In December, we are going to have more sessions on the GRE verbal and the GRE quantitative session. Except those sessions are in person. We have some sessions which are scheduled for December, they're virtual, some are in person. So do keep an eye out for those. If your questions were left unanswered in this session, then there's going to be a speaker for those sessions as well. They can answer your questions as well regarding the quant or verbal section. So we are out of time. I apologize if your questions were left unanswered. But with that, I would like to wish you all a good evening. Zulfiqar, thank you very much again for taking out the time. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you so much, Zubair, and thank you so much, participants. All the best.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Take care.